Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Veg Grower Podcast. My name's Richard and I want to encourage and inspire you to grow more of your own food in whatever space you have available. And I do this by sharing exactly what's been going on in my own allotment, my own kitchen garden here in Littlehampton on the south coast of the UK. I've been growing my own food for over 30 years now, but I still learn something new every single day. Now, coming up this week, down on the allotment, I have started a project that I've wanted to do for quite a while. Something that I think is really going to transform the appearance of the allotment once it grows in. Back at home, we have been sorting out a problem area in the kitchen garden. And then finally, back in the potting shed, I want to talk to you about our Christmas dinner vegetables. So that's all coming up this week. Let's get on with it. Well, I'm starting this week off down on the allotment, and I've actually been down on the allotment today. It has been a very, very productive day, I've got to say. The sun has been shining, it has been lovely. I've had conversations with neighbours who are just sort of saying, it's December, we're making the most of it while the sun shines. Don't blame them for 1 second, it's certainly been the case for me. It's been absolutely lovely. Now, when I came down to the allotment, the first thing I did was got the grass strimmer out and just run round cutting the grass. I did this last week, but I mentioned last week that I find that just keeping the grass trimmed on the allotment makes the entire place look a lot better. Just makes it look like it is being tended to. It didn't take that long to use the grass trimmer. Ideally, I would be using a lawnmower, but the grass is just too wet for the lawnmower to really work. So all I can do is use the grass trimmer. Until the grass dries out, that is, of course. So after that, I then headed over to an area next to my apple tree. Now, this is an area that runs alongside the road that passes by my allotment. It's an area that I haven't given much attention to. When I first built the allotment here, it was on my bottom half, the first half that I ever took on. That area had planted out some trees, sort of hawthorn trees and elder trees, the idea being it was going to be a edible hedge. It didn't really work, in all honesty. The trees just didn't really produce, or they got too big and ugly. It just didn't really work. So I started taking out those trees a couple of years ago. I also found it just didn't give me enough walking space between the trees and the beds to really do anything. So I took the trees out and I laid down some weed suppressing membrane, and then to hold the weed suppressing membrane down, I placed over some pots that had things like daffodils and stuff like that. Now, this was probably a year or two ago, and I've left it like that. Those pots, they became full of weeds. They didn't look very attractive. They're falling apart. I basically decided it was time for them to go. So I threw the inside straight into the compost bin and we'll get rid of the pot. I've sort of decided that on this allotment, we don't need anything growing in pots. Everything we grow here can be growing in the ground. Anyway, with the pots cleared, I peeled back the weed suppressant membrane, and below that was beautifully clean earth. The couch grass wasn't even growing in there. It's exactly what I was expecting to see, just soil. It was a delight to see because it meant that the weed suppressant membrane has done its job. Now, it won't take long, in all honesty, for the couch grass to take over that space. So what we have to do is try and keep on top of it. But this is where my next project has come into play, because I brought down with me an apple tree. Now, this apple tree I've planted into this area with 3 posts. One behind the apple tree, supporting it in the middle, and one on either side. Now, what we're doing here is I planted the apple tree. This apple tree I am training to be an espalier apple tree. It's going to make an edible fence, is the way I like to think of it. So all it's going to have is branches coming from the left and to the right, at about 3 different levels. It should look really, really pleasing. Now, I've started doing this at home last year. It's one of these things that it's easy to do, but you have to be very confident. I started at home. All I did is you take your main trunk, that running up, you find where you want your first left and right branches, which you're looking for sort of a nodule, a stem. I already had a couple of branches in this area, and we cut the main stem above those. There goes a motorbike. This is one of the delights of this road. Now, the idea being is that these left and right stems are going to focus the energy. They're going to produce fruit, and we train those left and right stems along a piece of wire that I've also put into place. But also, we expect that main trunk to have another bit of growth, which will also grow upwards, so we can repeat this the following year. It's a brave thing to do. It's called espalier tree training, but it is going to look stunning and produce a productive fruit area. And we're going to continue this on with other trees that we can do this with as well, and just basically create this beautiful looking fence all the way around the allotment. I'm looking forward to seeing how it turns out. Now, when I was doing this, when I was putting the posts into the ground, what I had to do was dig down with my fork and my spade about 2 spade depths in order to get these posts deep enough so they don't move. Now, we're not allowed to use cement or concrete or anything like that on our allotment site. And I suspect that's the case for many allotment sites. The reason being is that, well, it becomes difficult for the people who have to follow afterwards. And this was quite relevant because actually I spoke a couple of weeks ago about my apple tree that has a tendency to fall over. Well, one of these posts was going in that similar sort of area. And when I was trying to dig down, I discovered that somebody had previously put a post or something in there with a load of concrete. And that concrete was why my apple tree tends to lean over. So I had to dig that lump of concrete up in order to get the posts back in, which meant my apple tree also had to go back in as well. Luckily, because trees are dormant at this time of year, it's not too much of a problem. We can dig up trees at this time of year and they will be absolutely fine. Anyway, 3 posts are in, wires are in, apple tree is back in and straight and all into a good place. I then mulched these over with a bit of compost and then placed some straw over. Believe it or not, I'm actually running out of straw. All the straw that I used for my potatoes has all been used up in mulching all these different areas. So we're going to have to start getting some more straw in. However, I have seen my allotment site has had a delivery of wood chip, which we can also use as a mulch in these particular areas as well. Now, I mentioned compost that I've used to mulch around these trees as well, just to feed the soil a bit and to give it a bit of life. Well, the compost actually came from my compost bin that was surrounding the roots or the base of my elder tree that I cut down last year. Now, last year I had this elder tree that I planted when I first took on the allotment. It was an ugly looking thing and it didn't really do anything for us. Yes, we got elderflowers and elderberries, but we can forage those in the wild. So I decided to cut that tree down. But as always, getting the roots out, the base out, is always difficult. It's a very, very thick tree at the bottom. So I use my trick that I always do. And that is I put a compost bin over the base of the tree and then I fill it up with compost material and I hope that it will rot down. And the idea being is that it will also rot down around those tree roots. So it should, in theory, kill off the remaining base of the tree. Well, when I emptied that out, I used the compost, of course, to spread it around my fruit trees, but I checked on the roots of the elder tree. Now, normally, within a year of this, I've found that a tree can easily be removed because it's just got no energy to hold it in the ground. It's too rotten. The elder tree, because it was so big, it has started to rot. It is doing what I thought it would do. It just hasn't rotted enough that I can remove it easily. So I reckon another year of doing this and it should come out easy. This is my trick. I've said time and time again on this podcast, this is one of my tricks for how we get rid of tree roots and tree stumps from a garden. Just simply using it as a compost bin area so it rots away. It's a very, very simple technique and it works, which is why I like it. Anyway, that is what we have been doing here on the allotment. I've got to say, everything is coming together nicely. We've, of course, had a bit of a run around to make sure our Christmas dinner vegetables is ready. Some of us are probably harvesting our Christmas dinner vegetables this week. I will be harvesting mine on Christmas Eve. But we have carrots, we have parsnips, we have leeks, we have cabbages, we have sprouts, we have everything that we need. Well, it is time now for me to head on home back to the kitchen garden. In the meantime, let's find out what's been going on in the supporters club this week. Well, you know what's coming. It's that time of the podcast where I ask if you would be kind enough to do me a favour and just leave me a rate and review on your podcast provider. It only takes you a few seconds, but it really helps us out. It helps us get found by more people who might also want a bit of a helping hand, a bit of inspiration on how to grow more of their own food. But not only that, you can also help support keep this podcast running by becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. For just £5 a month to be a member, you can get access to extra behind-the-scenes podcasts that give you a bit of an idea of what's going on here at the Veg Grower Podcast HQ. But not only that, once a month you will also receive through your letterbox our monthly seed pack. And that seed pack contains a whole host of items. You've got our mini newspaper, which gives you a few instructions on how to grow some of the seeds that are included and a few ideas of what you can be doing throughout that month. Now, I mentioned it comes with seeds, which is the big selling point because these seeds are chosen to be sown in that very month. And I generally send about 6 packets of seeds every month. So I personally think it is really good value for just £5 a month. If that sounds like something you would be interested in, then please head to the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk to find out more. But as an example of what we've sown from a seed pack this week, we have been sowing some Mizuna, which is a type of mustard green leaf. It's absolutely delicious and it looks great in the garden as well. But we've also been sowing parsley, a favourite herb, something that we all enjoy growing. We use a lot here at the Veg Grower Podcast and it is a staple in my eyes. For just £5 a month to be a member, the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk, we would love to have you there. Right, back to the gardening. Well, I'm here in the kitchen garden now, and I have really been concentrating all my efforts on one particular area this weekend. This is an area towards the top of my kitchen garden at the boundary between the kitchen garden and my patio area. It's where I have my thornless blackberry and my tay breeze growing. These are growing in a bed that's 2 metres by 1 metre. But what has made this area a bit different is about 10 years ago now, I think, I built a trellis frame out of some bits of wood. Now, I built it at the time because it was cheaper to buy the bits of wood and just screw it together. It's lasted quite a while, but unfortunately it has now started to lean over quite significantly. So it was time to think about what we're going to do. But it started off with just clearing the area first. So I cut down both the blackberries and the tayberries to ground level. Now, I'm sure they will regrow. We're not going to lose the plants. But I think it means that this year we're not going to get much in the way of fruit out of these plants. Not a huge problem, not a big deal. It's just a little just a little sad in some ways, I guess you could say. Unfortunately, I think both of these plants had grown a little bit too big anyway, so it was probably time to give them a bit of TLC and a bit of a haircut to see what we could do. And when they bounce back, we might actually be able to sort of tie it in a bit better and keep them a little bit tidier. We will see. However, once the plants had been cut down, we then were able to remove the wooden trellis that I built a few years ago. It had rotted at the bottom and now was just the only being held up by the blackberries and the tayberries. So I've taken that down, chopped up the wood, and that's going to go on our wood stove. Now this gives us the ability now to see what we've got here and what we're going to do in the future. I did quite like growing the tayberries and the blackberries in this area, but they are big plants. They do take over the area quite rapidly, so perhaps it's not going to be suitable for growing in this little area. We might dig out those plants and replace them with something else that will still do the same sort of job, create a screening, but just not as big. Now on the other side of this we have an arch, which is how we get through to the patio area, and on the other side of that arch is where my grapevine lives, which is fairly similar. It's quite big grapevine, it takes over, but it has produced a lot of grapes this year, and it's done quite well at what I wanted to do, to create this screening effect so that my patio area is a little bit more private. Perhaps grapes is what we should use. I'm not sure. I'm open to suggestions on what we could do to screen out this area. Now that did take quite a bit of work because there was a lot of cutting, a lot of shredding and a lot of effort just to get everything into place. But it's done now and it's looking pretty damn good, I've got to say. I gave the ground a bit of a mulch with some more compost, of course, as well. We had it open. It's something that we tend to do. So that's taken up the bulk of my time this weekend, just doing that. We, of course, have just checked on our vegetables to make sure that final check before Christmas, we have enough vegetables for Christmas dinner. I know I've spoken about this a lot lately, but it is such an important time for me. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in just a moment in the podding shed. But what I can tell you now, we have plenty here in the kitchen garden and on the allotment. Right, I'm going to head on in and I will meet you back in the podding shed where, we're going to talk about what we're going to be cooking this week.
Chopping all the veggies, sizzle in the air. Chef Scott with the magic, smells are everywhere. Water starts to boil, onions hit the pan. Recipe of the week, let the feast begin. Cooking with Chef Scott, flavors come alive. Tune in every week for a tasty bite.
Well, I'm mixing things up in this week's podcast because usually, of course, I would have a recipe of the week. But what we're going to do this week is I'm going to finish off with a few recipes. And the reason I'm doing this is, of course, it is Christmas week. Christmas for me, I look forward to that Christmas dinner. It's one of my favourite parts of this time of year. But Christmas dinner is a bit of a feast, let's face it. There's a lot of food on the table that needs to be eaten. But the real highlight for me is the fact that all that food, it's certainly in the vegetables and the herbs, is homegrown. That for me really, really makes me smile. It really makes me happy because I love the fact that this feast I have really worked hard to produce. Now, I do know that not everybody listening to this podcast will celebrate Christmas, but whatever you're celebrating, hopefully you're going to enjoy it with some good homegrown food. You're going to find some of these recipes I'm going to share with you a great way to enjoy your homegrown food. So, of course, we're going to have the turkey. That's a main part. We're going to have the stuffing that I spoke of last week, but what other vegetables are we going to have on our Christmas dinner this year? Well, firstly, we have got the potatoes, and for me, roast potatoes are a must on our Christmas dinner. I know a lot of people will do things like new potatoes, mashed potatoes. For me, it's got to be roasted potatoes. I'm going to be using our King Edward potatoes that I grew on the allotment but have been in our stores since I harvested them. I've been checking on them regularly. They're going to be good. All we're going to do is peel those, parboil them in a bit of hot water, and then we're going to roast them in the oven in some olive oil, but with a bit of garlic, well, probably quite a few cloves of garlic actually, and a few sprigs of rosemary, just to add a bit of flavour to the roast potatoes. Trust me, it will be absolutely amazing. And for me, roast potatoes are a key part of this Christmas dinner. Next, we're going to have parsnips. Now, parsnips, again, I was a bit unsure if we're going to be able to get any homegrown parsnips, but luckily we have got plenty of parsnips that we're going to be using this year. Admittedly, supermarkets are selling a lot of these vegetables at an incredibly cheap price, which is an option. I'm hearing 5p a bag, which to me just seems criminal to sell it that cheap. But hey, at the end of the day, as long as people don't go starving, I'm all for it, as long as farmers aren't getting diddled. Anyway, back to the parsnips. So what I like to do is, of course, peel and cut the parsnips up. I like to parboil them again, just a couple of minutes in some boiling water before we roast them again in the oven with a bit of oil and a bit of maple syrup as well, just to add a bit of sweetness, just to add a bit of flavour and interest to our parsnips. They always go down well. Absolutely delicious again. A lot of these recipes you're going to hear me say absolutely delicious, but really simple to do at the same time. There's not, for me, nothing worse than spending hours slaving over the stove for what is basically a good Sunday roast dinner. No point spending hours slaving over. We want to make it as simple as we can, but as tasty as we can. Then we got the Brussels sprouts. Now, Brussels sprouts, I know not everybody likes, and I think a lot of that comes from the fact that often people would overcook the Brussels sprouts. They really only need a couple of minutes, 5 minutes at the most, in a pan of boiling water. But what I like to do, I actually boil mine for 3 minutes, depending on the size. And once they have been boiled, I then just put in a frying pan some bacon lardons. I fry those until the bacon is nice and crispy. And then I just add the sprouts for a minute, tossing all the time to soak up some of that bacon grease. And then I serve that with the bacon lardons on the table. Again, they always seem to go down well. I've never had anybody not like my sprouts. Carrots are next, and again, we're going to be doing roasted carrots. Pretty easy to do. Peel and chop the carrots as we would normally do, and then we just roast them in olive oil for 15 minutes. And then after that 15 minutes, I drizzle over honey over those carrots, and then I roast them again for another 10 minutes. Again, it just makes these a little bit more interesting, a little bit more flavourful. Next, we have the cabbage. Cabbage, for me, really delicious. Red cabbage we like to have on our Christmas table. And we just simply fry an onion. This is where it gets a bit complicated. This recipe is a bit harder to do, so I like to make it the day before. I just fry an onion in a pan with a bit of oil and butter. Add some cinnamon and nutmeg once it's fully sweated down. Then I'll add in some shredded cabbage, some apple and some red wine vinegar. And then I'll cook it for a few more minutes, and then I'll just finish it off with some red currant sauce. Now, as I say, I make this on Christmas Eve, so it's ready to go in a pan, and then I'll just heat it through on Christmas Day so that it is ready. And then finally, we've got leeks. And for me, leeks are amazing on their own. They don't need much flavour, but again, it's Christmas. We're going to spoil ourselves. So I make cheesy leeks, which is another good way, really, of something that we can make in advance. So what I do is I take 3 large leeks, I prepare them by slicing, and then I'll steam those until they are tender. They will then go in an oven-proof dish. In the meantime, I'll make a roux with equal amounts of butter and flour, just cooked over a hob in a saucepan until they becomes a nice thick paste. And then I just slowly add some milk, and then I'll add some cheddar cheese at the same time to make a nice cheese sauce. I then pour that over the leeks. And this is done on Christmas Eve, and then on Christmas Day we've just got to pop that in the oven and cook that again. Again, really, really easy, so simple to do and absolutely delicious. And that is it. That's all we're going to be having on our Christmas dinner table. It's plenty of food. We don't need to get too far carried away. Some people would, of course, go peas and sweet corn and everything else. It's just me and the wife this year. But whatever you are doing, I hope you have a good time. Hope you really enjoy it. For me, Christmas is all about spending time with family and friends and spending time doing the things that we enjoy. Time, the most valuable commodity that we all have. And I'd like to thank everybody who has listened to this podcast, supported this podcast. A big, big thank you for everything you have done over the 2025 season. And I hope you have a really, really enjoyable Christmas or whatever you might be celebrating. Now, I mentioned earlier, if you would be good enough to leave a rate and review, I would really appreciate it. It really helps us get found by more people who might also be interested in learning more about how to grow their own food. And I've actually had quite a few comments come in over this week. We've had over on Apple Podcasts, we've had from Charlie Guernsey. Always a great listen. I really look forward to these weekly podcasts. Easy to follow advice and thought-provoking about my own grow your own garden. Thank you so much for that feedback. I really appreciate it, and it really does help us get a good idea of what you want to hear. Over on Spotify, Lynn has said, "Hi Richard, can I say the recipe for chili sauce is so good. I plan to always have some in the fridge. It really is good. My allotment fee is £38 a year for a full-sized plot. It's been the same for 3 years now. It includes water too. A bargain, I think." Lynn in Norfolk. Now, I asked last week how much you pay for your allotment. As I said, I paid just over £100 for the year for mine. I think £38 is a very good price as well. Thank you very much for that. And to that, Steve Comboy says, "Great podcast as ever, Richard. Gardening is very much on my mind this Xmas period. Having acquired my first allotment plot at the end of September, I am obsessed. You asked to hear what people pay for my annual fee is £100 for the plot and £34 water rates. That's not bad as well, similar stock price to what I pay. Your podcasts have really helped. Not sure if you are still interested in seeing photos of people's plots, but happy to send my progress photos so far. If you are, keep up the good work, Steve in West Yorkshire." Absolutely, I love seeing everybody's photos. Wherever you are, whatever you do, I love seeing your photos. You can actually post them in our Facebook group, which you can find the Veg Grower Podcast. Just search that on Facebook. We've got a page and we have got a group, and people do post a lot of photos. I look at them all. I like to let people have their own conversations going on there, but it is a great community. I don't have to do much admin on it. It's a very friendly group, I've got to say. I used to have a forum on the website, but that's another story. But yeah, please do send your photos. You can post them in our Facebook group. You can email them to me, richard@veggrowerpodcast.co.uk, which of course, if you want to get in touch, then richard@veggrowerpodcast.co.uk is my email address. You can head to the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk, which is our website, and leave a blog post or a comment on the bottom of a blog post, or you can leave us a voicemail. And of course, you can find me on social media, and also please consider becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. Well, that is it for this week. We will be back again next week, where we're going to round up 2025 and look ahead to 2026. Look forward to speaking to you then. In the meantime, please take care.